A mother German shepherd led this missing child. Home. What happened next? Left. Everyone in tears. The story you're about to listen will make your heart stop. A mother's worst nightmare, a child lost in the wilderness, and a bond between a dog and a boy that defied all odds. What happened next shocked everyone who witnessed it. Like, share, and let us know where you're watching from. The wind whipped through the trees, carrying away Olivia Bennett's desperate cries. "Leo! Leo! Where are you?" Her voice cracked as the cold autumn air bit at her face. The sun was setting fast, painting the forest in long, dark shadows that seemed to mock her growing panic. Just 3 hours ago, everything had been normal. Perfectly, boringly normal. Olivia had been in her home office, the windows open to let in the crisp fall breeze. The sound of Leo's laughter had drifted in from the backyard, where he'd been playing with his toy dinosaurs. The familiar background noise had comforted her, as she'd focused on the work deadline that had kept her glued to her computer all afternoon. She'd glanced at her watch. 4:15 p.m., just 15 more minutes before she could close her laptop and join Leo outside. The thought had made her smile. Maybe they'd rake some leaves together, build a pile just for jumping in. "Just a little longer, buddy," she'd whispered to herself, her fingers flying across the keyboard. In the backyard, 5-year-old Leo had been lost in his own world of prehistoric adventures. His dinosaurs were having an epic battle when something bright caught his eye. A flash of red, vibrant against the golden-brown leaves of the forest edge. A cardinal. Its feathers blazed like fire against the autumn backdrop. Leo froze, his toys forgotten in his small hands. The bird hopped closer to the fence that separated their backyard from the woods beyond. It cocked its head, studying him with one black beady eye. "Hi, bird," Leo whispered, slowly rising to his feet. The cardinal chirped once, then fluttered to perch on the fence. It seemed to be waiting for him. Leo looked back at the house. Through the window, he could see his mom's head bent over her computer. She was busy with her important work. He wouldn't bother her. He'd just go look at the pretty bird up close, then come right back. The gap in the fence was small, a loose board that Leo had discovered weeks ago, but had never dared to use, until now. He squeezed through, his blue jacket catching briefly on a nail, before pulling free. The cardinal took flight the moment Leo stepped into the forest, landing on a branch just a few yards away. Close enough to follow. "Wait, birdie," Leo called softly, taking a few steps deeper into the woods. The cardinal flew again, a streak of red guiding him further from home. Inside, Nova's ears perked up. The German shepherd had been dozing on her bed in the kitchen, but something, a sound, a change in the air, had awakened her. Her golden eyes opened, alert and watchful. She lifted her head, listening intently. Nova wasn't just any dog. She had been found abandoned 8 months ago, pregnant and half-starved. Olivia had taken her in, given her a warm place to birth her puppies. But despite all their care, the puppies hadn't survived. Nova had mourned them, searching the house for days, whimpering softly as she'd nosed their empty beds. Then Leo had climbed into her bed one night, wrapping his small arms around her neck. "It's okay, Nova," he'd whispered. "I'll be your puppy." Something had changed in Nova that night. A bond had formed, unbreakable and fierce. She'd found a new purpose. Now, Nova rose from her bed, her nose working the air. Something was wrong. She padded to the back door, scratching at it once, then more urgently. When no one came, she barked sharply. Olivia looked up from her computer, momentarily irritated at the interruption. "Nova, quiet," she called. "Just a few more minutes." Back in the forest, Leo was already far from the fence. The cardinal had led him deep among the trees, each flash of red pulling him further from safety. But now the bird was gone, vanished among the branches overhead. Leo turned in a circle, suddenly aware of how different everything looked. The trees all seemed the same, tall and imposing. The ground was carpeted with leaves in identical shades of brown and gold. Which way was home? "Mommy?" he called, his voice small in the vastness of the forest. There was no answer but the rustle of leaves in the wind. A chill ran down his spine. The forest, which had seemed so magical moments before, now loomed around him, unfamiliar and frightening. The shadows were growing longer as the sun sank lower, and the temperature was dropping with it. Leo took a step in what he thought was the right direction, then another, but nothing looked familiar. No fence, no backyard, no home. "Mommy!" he called again, louder this time. Tears welled in his eyes, spilling over and tracking down his cheeks. "Mommy, I'm here." But his mother couldn't hear him. Not anymore. In the house, Olivia finally closed her laptop with a sigh of relief. Work done, she stretched and stood, looking forward to spending the rest of the evening with Leo. Nova was still barking at the door, now almost frantically. All right, I'm coming," Olivia said, making her way to the kitchen. "What's got you so worked up, girl?" She opened the back door, expecting Nova to dash out to relieve herself. Instead, the German Shepherd looked up at her with anxious eyes, then looked toward the yard, whining urgently. That's when Olivia noticed the silence. No sound of playing, no laughter. "Leo!" she called, stepping into the backyard. "Leo, where are you, honey? Time to come in." There was no answer. A flutter of unease stirred in her stomach. "Leo!" she called again, louder this time. She scanned the yard quickly, checking his favorite hiding spots. Behind the oak tree, under the porch swing, beside the garden shed. Nothing. The flutter in her stomach became a knot. "Leo!" she shouted, her voice rising with the first edge of panic. Nova ran across the yard, nose to the ground, following a scent. She stopped at the loose board in the fence, barking sharply. Olivia's heart seemed to stop as she ran to the fence. The gap was just big enough for a small body to squeeze through. Big enough for Leo. No, she whispered, dropping to her knees to look through the gap. Beyond was only forest, endless trees stretching into deepening shadow. Her hands trembled as she pulled the board aside, making the gap wider. She crawled through, not caring as her jeans tore at the knee, as a nail scraped her arm, drawing blood. "Leo!" she screamed, her voice echoing among the trees. "Leo! Answer me!" Nova was already ahead of her, nose down, following Leo's scent. The dog paused, looking back at Olivia with an urgency that was almost human. "Find him, Nova!" Olivia pleaded, her voice breaking. "Find Leo!" But the forest was vast, and darkness was falling fast. Olivia ran back to the house, hands shaking so badly she could barely dial her phone. 911, what's your emergency?" "My son," Olivia gasped, struggling to breathe through the panic crushing her chest. "My 5-year-old son is missing. He went into the forest behind our house. Please, he's been gone? I don't know how long. I was working, I thought he was in the yard." Her voice broke on a sob. "Ma'am, I need your address," the operator said calmly. Olivia gave it, then added, "Please hurry. It's getting dark, and he's only 5. He's wearing a blue jacket and jeans. His name is Leo. Leo Bennett. We're dispatching officers now, Ms. Bennett. They'll be there in minutes. Stay at your house in case your son returns. Do you have someone who can stay with you?" "No," Olivia whispered. She was a single mother, had been since Leo was 2. It was just the 2 of them, her and Leo. "It's just me, and our dog." "Stay on the line then, Ms. Bennett. Help is on the way." But Olivia couldn't wait. She couldn't stand in her empty house with her son lost in the darkening forest. "I have to go look for him," she said, hanging up before the operator could protest. She grabbed a flashlight, pulled on a sweater, and ran back outside. Nova was waiting at the fence, whining anxiously. "Let's go, girl," Olivia said, crawling through the gap again. "We need to find Leo." Together, they plunged into the forest, Olivia calling Leo's name until her voice grew hoarse, Nova leading the way, nose to the ground. But the forest was silent except for the whisper of wind through the trees and the increasingly frantic sound of Olivia's voice. Miles away, Leo huddled against the base of a large tree, his arms wrapped around his knees, trying to make himself as small as possible. The forest was almost completely dark now, the last light of day fading from the sky. The temperature had dropped sharply, and he shivered in his light jacket. "Mommy," he whimpered, tears streaming down his face. "I want to go home." Every sound made him jump, the crack of a twig, the rustle of leaves, the distant hoot of an owl. The forest, friendly and inviting in daylight, had transformed into a place of shadows and hidden threats. Leo buried his face against his knees, sobbing quietly. He was cold, scared, and more alone than he'd ever been in his short life. "Please find me," he whispered into the darkness. "Please, someone find me." But as night fell completely, the chances of anyone finding a small boy in the vast forest grew slimmer with each passing minute. Back at the Bennett home, Police cars lined the street, their blue and red lights flashing against the houses. Officers had arrived quickly, organizing an immediate search. But Olivia was still in the forest, refusing to return home without her son. "Ms. Bennett," Officer Rivera called, his flashlight cutting through the darkness between the trees. "Ms. Bennett, you need to come back to the house." Olivia emerged from the shadows, her face pale and tear-streaked in the harsh light. Nova padded beside her, still alert, still searching. "I can't leave him out here," she said, her voice raw from shouting. "He's afraid of the dark. He has a nightlight in his room. He never sleeps without it." The thought of Leo alone in the pitch-black forest sent a fresh wave of panic through her. Her bare feet were muddy and scratched, her sweater torn from pushing through brambles, but she didn't feel any of it. All she felt was the growing fear that squeezed her chest like a vice. "We have a search team assembling," Officer Rivera said gently. "Professionals with proper equipment. The best thing you can do for Leo now is come back and help us coordinate the search. Tell us where he might have gone, what he might do when scared." Olivia shook her head, unwilling to leave, but Nova nudged her hand insistently, then looked toward the house. Even the dog seemed to understand they needed help. "Okay," she whispered finally, "but you have to find him. Please, find my baby." As they walked back, Nova suddenly stiffened, her ears perking up. She turned, staring into the depths of the forest, her body tense with alertness. "What is it, girl?" Olivia asked, hope flaring in her chest. "Do you sense him?" Before Officer Rivera could stop her, Olivia had followed Nova back into the trees, calling Leo's name with renewed energy. But after a few minutes, Nova seemed to lose whatever trail she'd detected. By the time they returned to the house, a full search party had assembled. Police officers, volunteer firefighters, and neighbors who had heard the news and come to help. Maps were spread across Olivia's kitchen table, areas marked off for systematic searching. "We'll find him, Ms. Bennett," the search coordinator assured her. "We've got trained people, dogs, and all the right equipment." But as he spoke, he glanced at his watch, then out the window at the full darkness. They all knew what he wasn't saying. Night searches were difficult and dangerous, and the temperature was dropping fast, unusual for early fall. Olivia sank into a kitchen chair, her body trembling with exhaustion and fear. She couldn't bring herself to voice the question burning in her mind. What if they didn't find Leo in time? Nova paced restlessly by the back door, whining occasionally, her golden eyes fixed on the forest beyond the yard. She knew Leo was out there. She could sense him, almost taste his scent on the wind, and she knew something else too, something the humans with all their maps and flashlights and radios didn't know. Leo wasn't alone in those woods. As the search party organized into teams and headed out, Nova made her decision. While no one was looking, she slipped through the loose board in the fence and disappeared into the darkness, a shadow among shadows. She had a puppy to find. Deep in the forest, Leo had cried himself into exhaustion. His tears had dried, leaving salty tracks on his dirty cheeks. The night sounds of the forest still frightened him, but he was too tired to react anymore. His stomach growled with hunger, his throat was dry with thirst, and he was so cold that his teeth chattered and his small body shook. "I want to go home," he whispered again, but there was no one to hear him, or so he thought. In the blackness beyond his tree, a pair of eyes glinted, not golden like Nova's, but a pale, eerie green that caught what little moonlight filtered through the branches. They blinked once, twice, then began moving toward him. Leo saw them and froze, too terrified to even breathe. Something was coming for him. A fox emerged from the underbrush, its russet fur almost black in the darkness. It was lean and hungry-looking, its sharp snout raised to sniff the air. It had caught the scent of something small and frightened, something that might be prey. The fox took a step closer, its green eyes fixed on Leo. Then another step. Leo pressed himself harder against the tree trunk, as if trying to become part of it. A whimper escaped his throat. The fox's ears twitched at the sound, and it moved closer still, growing bolder. Somewhere in the distance, a twig snapped loudly. The fox paused, suddenly alert to a new presence in the forest. A low, threatening growl rumbled through the darkness, raising the hair on the back of Leo's neck. The fox's ears flattened against its head, its body tensing. The growl came again, closer this time, deep and unmistakably dangerous. And then Nova burst from the shadows, placing herself between Leo and the fox, her teeth bared in a snarl that left no doubt about her intentions. The fox hesitated, weighing its options. Nova was much larger, clearly stronger. After a moment's standoff, the fox turned and slipped back into the underbrush, vanishing as silently as it had appeared. Leo stared up at Nova, unable to believe his eyes. "Nova?" he whispered, his voice small and shaky. The German Shepherd turned to him, her fierce protective stance melting into gentle concern. She nuzzled his face, licking away the salt of his dried tears. Leo threw his arms around her neck, burying his face in her warm fur. "Nova?" he sobbed, relief flooding through him. "You found me." Nova settled beside him, pressing her warm body against his trembling one. She licked his cold hands, trying to warm them, then rested her head on his lap, her golden eyes watching the darkness around them protectively. For the first time since getting lost, Leo felt safe. Nova was here, Nova would protect him, but they were still lost in the vast forest, and home was still far away. As Leo clung to Nova's fur, the exhaustion and fear of the day caught up with him. Despite the cold, despite the frightening sounds of the night forest, his eyelids grew heavy. "Don't leave me," he murmured as sleep began to overtake him. Nova whined softly, nuzzling him again as if to say, "Never." And as Leo drifted into an uneasy sleep, Nova kept vigil, her ears alert to every sound, her nose testing the air for any threat. She had found her puppy. Now she needed to bring him home. Back at the house, Olivia paced the kitchen, unable to sit still despite her exhaustion. The search teams had been out for hours, combing the forest with flashlights and calling Leo's name. "He's a smart boy," she told Officer Rivera, who had stayed behind to coordinate the search from the house. "He knows his full name, our address, our phone number. He knows not to go with strangers." "That's good," Officer Rivera said encouragingly. "That's really good, Ms. Bennett." "But none of that helps him alone in the dark, does it?" Olivia whispered, her eyes filling with fresh tears. "He's out there all alone, and he's probably so scared." Officer Rivera had no answer for that. They both knew the truth. It was then that Olivia noticed Nova's absence. "Where's Nova?" she asked, looking around the kitchen. They searched the house, calling the dog's name, but Nova was nowhere to be found. "She must have gone after Leo again," Olivia said, a strange mix of dread and hope in her voice. "She's so protective of him." "That could be good," Officer Rivera said thoughtfully. "Dogs have incredible senses. If anyone can find your son in that forest, it might be your dog." But as the hours ticked by with no word from the search teams, even that small hope began to fade. Midnight came and went. The temperature continued to drop, unusually cold for this time of year. The meteorologist on the TV that no one was watching warned of an early frost by morning. Olivia sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by concerned neighbors who refused to leave her alone, staring at her phone and willing it to ring with news of Leo. Good news, any news. In the forest, the search teams were growing weary. Flashlight beams cut through the darkness. Voices called Leo's name, but the forest kept its secrets. "We should regroup," the search leader said reluctantly as 2 a.m. approached. "The men are exhausted and visibility is poor. We can start fresh at first light." No one wanted to be the one to tell Olivia Bennett they were calling off the search for the night, leaving her 5-year-old son alone in the freezing forest darkness. But as the teams began the solemn trek back to the Bennett house, a radio crackled to life. "Team 4 to base." Officer Rivera grabbed the radio. "This is base. Go ahead, Team 4. We thought we heard something. Might be nothing, but we're checking it out. Stand by." In the forest, the 4-person team had paused, listening intently. One of them had sworn they'd heard a dog bark, but it had been so faint, so distant, they couldn't be sure. "There," one of them said suddenly. "Did you hear it?" This time, they all heard it. A dog's bark, distant but distinct, coming from somewhere deep in the forest. "Base, we definitely heard a dog barking," the team leader reported. "Moving to investigate now." Olivia's heart leaped as Officer Rivera relayed the news. "It might be Nova," she said, fresh tears springing to her eyes. She might have found Leo. For the first time since the nightmare began, she allowed herself to hope. In the heart of the forest, Nova had made a decision. Leo had slept fitfully for a few hours, huddled against her warmth, but he was growing colder despite her efforts. His breathing was becoming shallow, his small body shivering violently. She had to get him home. Now, Nova nuzzled Leo awake, licking his face until his eyes fluttered open. "Nova?" he mumbled, his voice weak with cold and exhaustion. "I had a dream about Mommy." Nova whined softly, nudging him to his feet. It was time to move, but Leo's legs were stiff with cold, his body depleted of energy. He took a few stumbling steps, then sat down hard on the forest floor. "I can't, Nova," he whispered, his eyes filling with tears again. "I'm too tired, too cold." Nova circled him anxiously, whining with increasing urgency. She nudged him again, but Leo just shook his head, too exhausted to understand. Then Nova did something she had never done before. She took the collar of Leo's jacket gently between her teeth and tugged, trying to lift him. Leo looked up at her in surprise. "What are you doing, Nova?" The German Shepherd tugged again, more insistently this time. The message was clear. "Get up. We have to move." Leo tried again to stand, but his legs buckled beneath him. "I can't, girl," he said, his voice breaking. "I just can't." Nova stood still for a long moment, her golden eyes fixed on Leo's face. Then she made her second decision of the night. Very carefully, she took Leo's jacket collar in her teeth again. But this time, instead of trying to lift him to his feet, she began to drag him. Leo was too surprised to protest at first. Then, understanding what Nova was trying to do, he made himself as light as possible, helping by pushing with his feet when he could. It was slow, difficult progress. Nova had to stop often to readjust her grip, to let Leo rest, to navigate around obstacles. But she was determined. Step by painstaking step, she dragged her human puppy through the dark forest. And as she did, she began to bark, sharp, loud barks that echoed through the trees, carrying farther than Leo's small voice ever could. That was the sound Team 4 had heard, and as they moved toward it, the barking grew louder, more insistent. "It's definitely a dog," the team leader reported back to base. "And it sounds like it's trying to get our attention." Olivia's hands trembled as she clutched Officer Rivera's arm. "It's Nova," she said with certainty. "It has to be. She's trying to bring Leo home." The search team moved faster now, following the sound of Nova's barking. Their flashlight beams cut through the darkness, sweeping across tree trunks and undergrowth. The barking grew louder, more urgent, guiding them deeper into the forest. "We're getting close," the team leader said into his radio. "The barking is very clear now." In the kitchen, Olivia could barely breathe. Every muscle in her body was tight with anticipation and fear. Officer Rivera kept his hand on her shoulder, steadying her. "They'll find him," he said softly. "We have to believe that." Olivia nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The hope that had been a tiny flame was now burning brighter, but she was afraid to let it grow too strong. She had already imagined 1,000 terrible scenarios. She couldn't bear to hope, only to have that hope crushed. Deep in the forest, Nova was tiring. Dragging Leo through the underbrush was exhausting work, even for her strong body. But she refused to stop. Her instincts told her they were still far from home, and Leo was growing weaker. His shivering had lessened, which Nova somehow sensed was not a good sign. "I'm so cold, Nova," Leo whispered, his voice barely audible. "And sleepy. Can I sleep again?" Nova whined anxiously, dropping his jacket to lick his face, trying to keep him awake. She sensed the danger in his drowsiness, the threat that went beyond cold and hunger. She barked again, louder than before, the sound echoing through the trees. And then, in the distance, she saw it, the faint glow of light bobbing between the trees. Her keen ears picked up voices, human voices, calling out. Nova barked again, a rapid series of sharp barks that said clearer than words, "We're here. We're here." "Nova?" Leo murmured, his eyes struggling to focus. "What is it, girl?" The German Shepherd grabbed his jacket again and gave a final, determined pull, dragging him toward the approaching lights. The search team leader's flashlight beam caught the reflection of Nova's eyes first, 2 golden discs glowing in the darkness. "There!" he shouted, pointing. "I see something!" The team rushed forward, their flashlights now converging on a sight none of them had been prepared for. A large German Shepherd, standing protectively over a small, still form on the ground. "It's the boy!" someone shouted into their radio. "We found him!" "And the dog?" The dog is with him. Nova stood her ground as the humans approached, a low growl rumbling in her throat. She was exhausted, but she would still protect her puppy if needed. "Easy, girl," the team leader said softly, approaching with his hand outstretched. "We're here to help. Good dog, good, brave dog." Nova's growl faded as she recognized their intentions. These humans meant no harm. They were here to help take Leo home. One of the team members, a paramedic, knelt beside Leo, quickly assessing his condition. "He's alive, but he's dangerously cold. Pulse is weak but steady. We need to get him warmed up and to a hospital right away." They wrapped Leo in emergency thermal blankets, lifting him gently onto a stretcher. Nova watched every move, never taking her eyes off Leo, still not entirely trusting these strangers with her precious charge. "The dog saved his life," the team leader said in awe. "Dragged him who knows how far." The paramedic nodded, looking at Nova with newfound respect. If she hadn't found him, kept him warm through the night, if she hadn't led us to him. He didn't need to finish the sentence. They all knew what he meant. Without Nova, they would have been searching for a very different outcome come morning. "Base, this is Team 4, the leader radioed. "We have the boy. He's alive but needs immediate medical attention. We're bringing him in now. And tell Ms. Bennett her dog is a hero. The dog found him. The dog saved him." In the kitchen, Olivia collapsed into a chair as Officer Rivera relayed the news, her entire body shaking with relief. "He's alive," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "My baby is alive." "Thanks to your dog," Officer Rivera added, his voice filled with admiration. "They said Nova found him, kept him warm, and then led the search team to him. She literally saved his life, Ms. Bennett." Olivia couldn't process it fully yet. All that mattered was that Leo was coming home. He was alive. The wait for the search team to make their way out of the forest seemed endless. Olivia stood on her front porch, staring into the darkness, willing them to appear. Around her, neighbors and officers waited with her, offering silent support. Finally, flashlights appeared at the edge of the forest. Olivia ran across the yard, not caring about the cold ground beneath her bare feet. The team emerged from the trees, carrying a stretcher. On it lay a small form wrapped in silver thermal blankets, and beside them, limping slightly with exhaustion, but never straying from the stretcher's side, was Nova. Olivia reached them just as they entered the yard. "Leo," she sobbed, her hands hovering over him, afraid to touch, afraid to believe he was really there. Leo's eyes fluttered open at the sound of her voice. "Mommy?" he whispered, his voice weak but unmistakable. "I'm here, baby," Olivia said, taking his cold hand in hers as they continued toward the waiting ambulance. "Mommy's here. You're safe now?" "Nova found me," Leo murmured, his eyelids heavy. "She saved me from a fox. She kept me warm. She pulled me home." Olivia looked down at Nova, who was keeping pace with the stretcher despite her obvious exhaustion. Their eyes met. The mother and the dog, who had both loved Leo enough to never give up. "Thank you," Olivia whispered, reaching down to touch Nova's head. "Thank you for saving my son." Nova whined softly, pushing her head against Olivia's hand. She was tired, more tired than she'd ever been. But she had done what she needed to do. She had protected her puppy. As the paramedics prepared to load Leo into the ambulance, Nova tried to climb in after him, unwilling to be separated now. "I'm sorry, ma'am," one of the paramedics said to Olivia. "We can't take the dog in the ambulance." Leo's small hand reached out for Nova. "No," he protested weakly. "Nova comes too. Please, Mommy." Olivia looked from her son to the dog who had saved his life. Nova's golden eyes were pleading, her entire body trembling with exhaustion, but still determined to stay with Leo. "She saved his life," Olivia said firmly to the paramedic. "She's not leaving his side now." The paramedic looked at his partner, then back at Olivia. Something in her face must have convinced him, because he sighed and nodded. "All right, the dog can come, but you'll have to hold her." Olivia nodded gratefully, helping Nova into the ambulance before climbing in herself. She sat beside Leo's stretcher, one hand on her son's chest, feeling the reassuring rise and fall of his breathing, the other buried in Nova's thick fur. As the ambulance doors closed and they pulled away from the house, Olivia bent down to whisper in Nova's ear. "Your family," she said softly. "Forever and always. You brought my baby home." Nova rested her head on the edge of Leo's stretcher, her golden eyes never leaving his face. She had done what any mother would do for her puppy. She had faced the darkness, the cold, the wild forest, and her own exhaustion to bring him home. At the hospital, the staff made an exception to their no animals policy when they heard what Nova had done. She was allowed to stay in Leo's room, curled up at the foot of his bed, as doctors treated him for hypothermia and exposure. "He's going to be fine," the doctor assured Olivia. "Children are remarkably resilient. He was very lucky. Another few hours in those temperatures, without the dog's body heat." Again, the unspoken end of the sentence hung in the air. Another tragedy narrowly avoided, thanks to Nova. As Leo slept, warm and safe in his hospital bed, Olivia sat beside him, her hand never leaving his. Nova dozed fitfully at the foot of the bed, still on guard despite her exhaustion. A nurse came in to check Leo's vitals, smiling at the sight of Nova. "Everyone's talking about your dog," she said quietly to Olivia. "The police officers told us what she did. It's incredible." Olivia looked at Nova, seeing her now in a new light. Not just a pet, not just a companion, but a guardian who had proven her devotion in the most profound way possible. "She was abandoned when I found her," Olivia said softly. "Pregnant and half-starved. Her puppies didn't make it. I think she sees Leo as her puppy now." The nurse nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Mother's instinct," she said. "Nothing stronger in this world." As the night gave way to dawn, news of Nova's heroic rescue began to spread. Local reporters gathered outside the hospital, eager for the story of the German Shepherd who had saved a child's life. By morning, Leo was awake and improving rapidly. His body temperature had returned to normal, and the doctor was pleased with his recovery. "Can we go home today?" Leo asked, his voice stronger now, more like his usual self. Nova's head perked up at the question, her ears swiveling forward. "Not quite yet, buddy," the doctor replied. "We want to keep you one more night, just to be sure everything's okay, but definitely tomorrow." Leo nodded, disappointed but accepting. Then he turned to Nova, who had moved closer at the sound of his voice. "You hear that, Nova? We can go home tomorrow." Nova wagged her tail, resting her head on the bed beside Leo's hand. He stroked her fur, his small fingers tangling in her thick coat. "She pulled me, Mommy," he said, looking up at Olivia with wide eyes. "When I couldn't walk anymore, she grabbed my jacket and pulled me, like I was her puppy." Olivia's throat tightened with emotion. "That's because she loves you," she managed to say. "Just like I do." A nurse came in with a tray of food for Leo and a surprise, a bowl of water and some dog treats for Nova. "The staff all chipped in," she explained with a smile. "We thought your hero deserved a treat." Nova accepted the treats graciously but never moved far from Leo's side. Throughout the day, hospital staff found excuses to peek into Leo's room, all of them eager to see the dog that had performed such an amazing rescue. Nova endured the attention stoically, accepting their pats and praises with dignity, but always returning to her post beside Leo. By evening, the story had gone viral. Local news stations ran segments on the heroic German Shepherd, complete with interviews with the search team members who had witnessed Nova's incredible determination firsthand. "She was dragging him through the forest," one of them told the cameras. "I've never seen anything like it. That dog refused to give up on that little boy. She's a true hero." Social media exploded with the story, people sharing videos and commenting on the remarkable bond between a boy and his dog. Messages of admiration and support poured in from across the country. In Leo's hospital room, Olivia scrolled through some of the comments on her phone, amazed at the outpouring of love for Nova. "Listen to this, Leo," she said. "Nova is a reminder of the incredible bond between humans and animals. What a beautiful and inspiring story." Leo smiled, his arm wrapped around Nova's neck as she lay beside him on the bed, against hospital regulations, but no one had the heart to enforce them. "She's the best dog ever," he said simply. That night, as Leo slept peacefully, Olivia noticed Nova seemed restless. The German Shepherd paced the small hospital room, whining softly, her movements stiff and awkward. "Nova?" Olivia whispered, concerned. "What's wrong, girl?" Nova came to her, pressing against her legs, whimpering. Only then did Olivia notice that Nova was holding her right front paw slightly off the ground. Gently, Olivia examined the paw, finding it swollen and tender to the touch. Nova had been limping earlier, but in all the chaos and relief, Olivia hadn't given it much thought. Now, in the quiet of the hospital room, she realized Nova was in pain. She called for a nurse, who took one look at Nova's paw and made a call. Minutes later, to Olivia's surprise, a veterinarian arrived. "I was visiting my sister on this floor when the nurse called," the vet explained. "Said there was a canine hero who needed help. I had to come see for myself." The vet examined Nova carefully, speaking to her in soothing tones as she checked the injured paw. "She's got a nasty sprain," the vet said finally, "and some cuts that could use cleaning. She must have injured herself while dragging your son through the forest, but kept going despite the pain." Olivia's eyes filled with tears again. Even injured, Nova had never stopped trying to save Leo. The vet cleaned Nova's cuts and bandaged her paw, giving Olivia some pain medication for her. "She needs rest," the vet advised, "but something tells me she won't leave her boy's side." And she was right. Despite her pain, Nova returned to her post at the foot of Leo's bed, her golden eyes watchful, even as her body begged for rest. The next morning, Leo was ready to be discharged. The doctor gave Olivia instructions for his care at home, though he was recovering remarkably well. "He's a tough little guy," the doctor said with a smile, "and he has a great protector in that dog." As they prepared to leave, a hospital administrator knocked on the door, looking slightly awkward. "Ms. Bennett, there are some people outside who would like to speak with you, press mostly. The story of your dog's rescue has it's gone quite viral overnight." Olivia hesitated, looking down at Leo and Nova. They had been through so much already. But Leo looked up at her with excitement. "Can we, Mommy? Can we tell everyone how brave Nova was? How could she say no to that?" Olivia nodded to the administrator. "Okay, but just for a few minutes." Outside the hospital, they were met by a crowd of reporters and cameras. Olivia carried Leo, still weak from his ordeal, while Nova limped beside them, her bandaged paw a badge of her dedication. The questions came fast. How did Leo get lost? How had Nova found him? What was it like when they heard he had been found? Olivia answered as best she could, but it was Leo who captivated the crowd with his simple, childlike description of his rescue. "I was really scared and cold," he told them, his voice clear despite his still pale face. "A fox came, but Nova scared it away. She stayed with me all night to keep me warm, and when I couldn't walk anymore, she pulled me, like I was her puppy." The reporters were enthralled, their cameras focused on the small boy and the German shepherd who stood protectively beside him despite her injury. "Nova is a hero," one reporter said. "How does it feel to know your dog saved your son's life?" Olivia looked down at Nova, who was leaning against her leg, tired but attentive. "I don't have words," she said honestly. She risked everything to save Leo. She never gave up on him, even when she was hurt. She's more than a hero. She's family. The story aired on local news that evening, then national news the next day. By the end of the week, Nova's rescue had been featured in newspapers and on websites around the world. People were moved by the devotion of a dog who had once been abandoned, who had lost her own puppies, and who had found a new purpose in protecting a human child. Donations began to pour in, for Nova's medical care, for Leo's college fund, for animal shelters in their name. Letters and packages arrived daily at the Bennett home, all addressed to Nova, the hero dog. But Nova remained unaffected by her newfound fame. Her world was still centered on Leo, on watching over him, on being there when he needed her. Her paw slowly healed, and soon she was able to run and play with Leo in the backyard again. Though Olivia noticed that Nova never let Leo out of her sight now, not even for a moment. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sun set over the forest that had nearly taken Leo from them, Olivia saw something that made her breath catch. Leo, sitting on the steps with Nova beside him, had his arm around the dog's neck. He was whispering something in her ear, something only for her. Nova turned her head and licked his face, her golden eyes filled with a love so pure and deep, it brought tears to Olivia's eyes. In that moment, Olivia understood something profound about the bond between her son and his dog. It wasn't just that Nova had saved Leo's life. It was that, in some fundamental way, they had saved each other. The abandoned dog who had lost her puppies. The little boy being raised by a single mother. They had found in each other exactly what they needed. Unconditional love, unwavering loyalty, and the profound security of knowing they would never be alone. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the yard, Olivia wondered what Nova had endured before she found her way to them. What hardships had shaped her into the kind of dog who would risk everything to save a child? What instincts had driven her into the darkness to find her lost boy? She would never know the full story of Nova's past, but she knew with absolute certainty that Nova's future would be filled with love and security. This dog who had given so much would never want for anything again. Later that night, after tucking Leo into bed with Nova curled up beside him, a new sleeping arrangement since the rescue, Olivia sat in the living room and opened her laptop. The story of Nova's heroic rescue had brought attention to the plight of abandoned animals, particularly pregnant ones like Nova had been. Inspired by Nova's incredible act of courage, people across the country were adopting shelter dogs, giving second chances to animals who had been discarded or forgotten. Nova's rescue of Leo had in turn rescued countless other dogs. Olivia smiled as she scrolled through images of happy families with their newly adopted pets. Something beautiful had come from their ordeal, something that would change lives far beyond their own. What would you have done if you were lost in the forest like Leo? Would your pet risk everything to save you? Share your thoughts below. A month after Leo's rescue, life in the Bennett household had found a new normal. The media frenzy had died down, though occasionally a reporter would still call or stop by, seeking an update on the story that had touched so many hearts. Olivia had politely but firmly begun declining most interview requests, feeling that Leo needed time to process his experience without constant reminders. The loose board in the fence had been fixed, along with the installation of a proper gate. Leo was allowed to play in the backyard again, but always under Olivia's watchful eye, and Nova's even more vigilant supervision. The German Shepherd had appointed herself Leo's permanent guardian, rarely letting him out of her sight for more than a few minutes. On this particular Saturday morning, Olivia sat on the porch swing, sipping her coffee as she watched Leo and Nova playing in the yard. The autumn leaves had all fallen now, covering the ground in a crisp golden carpet that crunched satisfyingly under Leo's boots as he ran. Nova bounded alongside him, her paw fully healed, her energy completely restored. Olivia smiled at the sound of Leo's laughter, a sound she had feared she might never hear again. The memory of that terrible night still haunted her dreams sometimes, but the joy of each new day with her son helped push those nightmares further into the past. Her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Dr. Miranda, the veterinarian who had treated Nova at the hospital and had since become both their regular vet and a friend. "Don't forget, Nova's awards ceremony is next Saturday. The whole town's talking about it." Olivia texted back a quick thanks for the reminder. The mayor had decided to honor Nova with the city's first ever Animal Hero Award, a ceremony that was expected to draw quite a crowd. Leo was excited about it, proud to see his beloved dog recognized for her bravery. Olivia felt the same pride, but she was also slightly anxious about putting Leo back in the spotlight so soon after their ordeal. "Nova!" Leo's voice called out, drawing Olivia's attention back to the yard. "Watch this!" He threw a ball high into the air, and Nova leaped, catching it mid-flight with an athletic grace that never failed to impress them. Leo cheered, running to hug the dog as she landed with the ball clutched triumphantly in her jaws. Olivia's phone rang, the hospital calling to confirm her upcoming shift. She had finally returned to work part-time as a nurse, having taken several weeks off to be with Leo after the incident. She answered, moving inside to hear better over Leo's excited shouts as he continued playing with Nova. When she returned to the porch a few minutes later, the scene in the yard had changed. Leo was sitting cross-legged on the ground, and Nova was lying beside him, her head in his lap. They appeared to be having a serious conversation, or rather, Leo was talking, and Nova was listening with the intense focus she always gave him. Olivia moved closer, curious about what her son was saying to his dog. "And I was so scared, Nova," she heard Leo saying, his small hand stroking her fur. "But you found me. You're the bravest dog ever." Olivia paused, her heart constricting. Leo hadn't talked much about his feelings during the ordeal. The child psychologist they had visited had said this was normal, that Leo would process the experience in his own time and way. "I was afraid of the dark and the fox and being all alone," Leo continued, unaware of his mother listening. "But then you came, and I wasn't scared anymore because I knew you wouldn't let anything bad happen to me." Nova whined softly, nudging Leo's hand with her nose. "Mommy says you pulled me because you think I'm your puppy," Leo said, looking down into Nova's golden eyes. "Is that true? Am I your puppy, Nova?" Nova lifted her head and licked Leo's face, making him giggle. To Olivia, watching from a few steps away, it looked very much like an affirmation. "I think she's saying yes," Olivia said, finally making her presence known. Leo looked up, his face bright. "I'm her puppy, and she's my dog, Mommy," he declared, throwing his arms around Nova's neck. "We're family." Olivia sat down on the grass beside them, wrapping an arm around Leo's shoulders and placing her other hand on Nova's back. "Yes, we are," she agreed softly. "All three of us." Later that afternoon, they received an unexpected visitor. Officer Rivera, who had stayed in touch since the rescue, came by with a gift for Nova. A special custom-made collar with a tag that read "Hero" on one side and had their contact information on the other. "Thought she deserved something special?" he said, watching as Olivia fastened it around Nova's neck. "That's one amazing dog you've got there." Nova seemed to appreciate the gift, holding her head a little higher as she paraded around the living room, showing off her new collar to an admiring Leo. "We're having a small gathering next weekend after the awards ceremony," Olivia told Officer Rivera. "Just a few people who were involved in the search. We'd love it if you could come." He accepted the invitation with a smile, shaking Leo's hand solemnly before leaving. "You've got quite a guardian there, young man," he told Leo, nodding toward Nova. "Make sure you take good care of her, too." "I will," Leo promised earnestly. "Forever and ever." As the day of the ceremony approached, Olivia noticed Leo becoming increasingly quiet and clingy. He insisted on sleeping with Nova every night and seemed reluctant to let either Olivia or the dog out of his sight for long. The morning before the ceremony, Olivia found Leo sitting on his bed, holding Nova's new collar in his hands, a troubled expression on his face. "What's wrong, buddy?" she asked, sitting beside him. Leo looked up, his eyes swimming with sudden tears. "What if someone tries to take Nova away because she's a hero?" he blurted out. "What if they want her for a police dog or something?" "I don't want her to go away." Olivia pulled him into a hug, suddenly understanding his recent behavior. "Oh, sweetheart, no one's going to take Nova away from us. She's our dog, our family." "But she's so special," Leo said, sniffling against her shoulder. "Everyone says so. What if someone important wants her?" "Nova is special," Olivia agreed, stroking his hair. "But she's special because of how much she loves you. That's why she saved you, and that's why she belongs with us. No one's going to take her away. I promise." Leo looked unconvinced, so Olivia tried a different approach. "You know what? Let's ask Nova what she wants." She called to the dog, who was lying just outside Leo's bedroom door as usual. Nova came in immediately, looking from Olivia to Leo with concern in her intelligent eyes, clearly sensing Leo's distress. "Nova," Olivia said seriously, "do you want to stay here with Leo and me, or would you rather go be a famous hero dog somewhere else?" Nova didn't hesitate. She went straight to Leo, resting her head on his lap, and looking up at him with such devotion that no words were necessary. Leo wrapped his arms around her neck, burying his face in her fur. "See?" Olivia said softly. "Nova knows where she belongs. Right here with us." Leo nodded, finally smiling again. "Right here," he echoed, his fears apparently soothed by Nova's clear answer. The day of the ceremony dawned bright and clear. Olivia had bought Leo a new outfit for the occasion, and had even found a fancy bandana for Nova to wear over her heroism medal. As they got ready, Leo became excited again, practicing his part of the ceremony where he would help the mayor place the medal around Nova's neck. The town square was already crowded when they arrived. It seemed like everyone in their small community had turned out to honor Nova. A small stage had been set up, decorated with balloons and a banner that read, "Honoring Nova, our canine hero." As they approached, people began to notice them, smiling and pointing. A path cleared for them, and many reached out to pat Nova or shake Olivia's hand as they passed. Leo stayed close to Nova's side, one hand buried in her fur as they walked. The mayor spotted them and hurried over, bending down to greet Leo with a handshake and Nova with a respectful pat on the head. "Are you ready for the ceremony?" he asked Leo. "You've got a very important job today." Leo nodded solemnly. "I'm going to help put the medal on Nova," he said. Because I'm her person. The mayor smiled. Yes, you certainly are, and a very lucky person too, to have such a brave dog. The ceremony began with the mayor giving a speech about heroism, community, and the special bond between humans and animals. He recounted the story of Leo's rescue, emphasizing Nova's determination and courage. Throughout it all, Nova sat calmly at Leo's feet, seemingly uninterested in all the attention focused on her. When it came time for the medal presentation, Leo joined the mayor on the small stage, proudly helping to place the specially made medallion around Nova's neck. The crowd erupted in applause, many wiping away tears as cameras flashed to capture the moment. The mayor had just invited Olivia to say a few words when a commotion at the back of the crowd caught everyone's attention. People were moving aside, making way for someone pushing urgently through the gathered onlookers. A tall man, with salt and pepper hair, emerged from the crowd, his eyes fixed on Nova with an intensity that made Olivia instinctively step closer to Leo and the dog. There was something familiar about him, something she couldn't quite place. "That's my dog," the man said, his voice carrying across the suddenly hushed square. "That's Stella." Nova's ears perked up at the name, her head tilting as she looked at the stranger. A murmur ran through the crowd. The man approached the stage, stopping a few feet away. "I've been looking for her for over a year," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I saw the story on the news, recognized her immediately. The white star marking on her chest, the scar above her left eye." Olivia felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. Leo pressed against her side, his small face pale with shock. "Sir," the mayor started, clearly unsure how to handle this unexpected turn of events. "This is Nova. She belongs to this family." "Her name is Stella," the man insisted, taking another step forward. "She was stolen from my yard last spring. I can prove it. I have her papers, photos, even her DNA on file with the breeder." Olivia finally found her voice. I found her abandoned nearly a year ago," she said. "She was pregnant, half-starved, no collar, no microchip. I took her to a vet. They checked." The man's face softened with sadness. "She was stolen before she was supposed to be chipped," he explained. "She was just a year old. Someone broke into my yard and took her. I've been searching ever since." Leo, who had been clutching Nova's fur tightly, suddenly spoke up, his voice small but determined. "She's Nova now," he said, "and she's my dog. She saved me." The man looked at Leo, really seeing him for the first time. Something in his expression changed as he seemed to recognize the boy from the news stories. "You're the kid she rescued," he said quietly. "From the forest." Leo nodded, tears starting to spill down his cheeks. "She's my dog, Mommy," he said, his voice breaking. "Please don't take her away." The man looked from Leo to Nova, who had positioned herself slightly in front of the boy, just as she had done in the forest with the fox. Her posture wasn't aggressive, but it was unmistakably protective. "I've had German shepherds all my life," the man said after a long moment. "They bond deeply. They're loyal to a fault." He took a deep breath, his eyes never leaving Nova. "She was my dog once, but it's clear where her heart is now." A collective sigh of relief seemed to pass through the gathered crowd. The mayor stepped forward, clearly relieved. "Perhaps we could discuss this privately," he suggested, gesturing toward the town hall behind the square. The man, who introduced himself as James Kellerman, agreed, and soon they were all sitting in the mayor's office. Olivia, Leo, Nova, Mr. Kellerman, and the mayor himself. Nova lay at Leo's feet, her eyes tracking between the adults as they spoke, seemingly aware that her fate was being discussed. Mr. Kellerman brought out his phone, showing them photos of a younger Nova, or Stella, as she had been known then. There was no doubt it was the same dog. He explained how she had been stolen, how he had searched for months, posted rewards, contacted shelters. "I never stopped looking," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "She was my best friend." Olivia felt torn between sympathy for this man, who had clearly loved and lost his dog, and the devastating prospect of taking Nova away from Leo. After all they had been through, after the bond that had formed between them, especially since the rescue, she couldn't imagine separating them. "What if," she began hesitantly, "what if we shared her?" Everyone looked at her in surprise. "I mean, if you live nearby, perhaps Nova, Stella, could spend time with both families." It was a desperate suggestion, born of a mother's need to protect her child from more trauma. Mr. Kellerman smiled sadly. "I live 3 states away," he said. "I flew here as soon as I confirmed it was her." The room fell silent except for the sound of Leo's quiet sniffling as he buried his face in Nova's fur. The dog whined softly, pressing closer to him. Mr. Kellerman watched them for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he stood up and walked over to where Leo sat with Nova. He knelt down, bringing himself to the boy's eye level. "I heard what you said about her being your dog, Mommy," he said gently. "Can you tell me more about that?" Leo looked up, tears streaking his face. "She thinks I'm her puppy," he said. "Her real puppies died, and she was sad. But then she found me, and now she takes care of me. She saved me from the fox and the cold. She pulled me all the way home, even though her paw was hurt." Mr. Kellerman nodded, his eyes suspiciously bright. "She always was a protector," he said softly, "even as a puppy herself." He reached out slowly, letting Nova sniff his hand before gently stroking her head. "Hello, old friend," he whispered. "You've been busy, haven't you?" Nova allowed his touch, even leaning into it slightly, but she didn't move from Leo's side. "You know," Mr. Kellerman said, addressing Leo directly, "when someone loves something, really loves it, sometimes the bravest thing they can do is let it go." He swallowed hard, his hand still resting on Nova's head. "I loved Stella, Nova, enough to never stop looking for her. But I can see she has a new purpose now, a new family who needs her." Leo's eyes widened as he began to understand what the man was saying. Are you letting her stay with us?" he asked, hardly daring to hope. Mr. Kellerman nodded, a sad smile touching his lips. "She chose you," he said simply. "Who am I to argue with that?" The relief that flooded through Olivia was so intense she felt lightheaded. She hadn't realized how tightly she'd been holding herself until that moment, when the tension finally released. "Thank you," she whispered, unable to find stronger words for her gratitude. "Thank you so much." Mr. Kellerman straightened up, addressing Olivia now. "I would like to visit sometimes, if that's all right," he said, "just to see how she's doing. Maybe take her for a walk now and then, to remember old times." "Of course," Olivia agreed immediately. "Anytime you're in town. You'll always be welcome." They returned to the square, where the crowd had waited curiously for the outcome of the private discussion. The mayor made a brief announcement explaining that Mr. Kellerman had generously decided to let Nova remain with the family she had saved, which was met with applause and more than a few tears. The ceremony concluded on a note of unexpected but profound joy, a celebration not just of Nova's heroism in the forest, but of the compassion shown by a man who had loved her enough to let her go. That evening, as Olivia tucked Leo into bed with Nova curled up beside him as usual, he asked a question that showed just how deeply he had understood the day's events. "Mommy," he said thoughtfully, "Mr. Kellerman was really sad to say goodbye to Nova, wasn't he? Even though he was smiling." Olivia nodded, smoothing Leo's hair back from his forehead. "Yes, he was. It was a very hard decision for him, but he made it because he could see how much Nova loves you and how much you love her." Leo was quiet for a moment, thinking. "That's why he's coming to visit next month, right? Because he still loves her too." "That's right," Olivia said, impressed by her son's insight. "Love doesn't just disappear, even when things change." Leo reached out to stroke Nova's fur, the dog's eyes half closed in contentment. "I think Nova still loves him too, a little bit," he said. "And that's okay, because she has a big heart, big enough for lots of love." Olivia smiled, leaning down to kiss Leo's forehead. "That's very wise, Leo, and very kind." As she turned out the light and moved to the door, Leo's voice came once more from the darkness. "Mommy? I'm glad Mr. Kellerman let Nova stay with us, but I think I understand why it was so hard for him. If someone tried to take Nova from me, I'd be really, really sad too." "Me too, buddy," Olivia said softly. "Me too. But Nova's not going anywhere. She's right where she belongs." And as if to confirm this, Nova sighed contentedly in the darkness, settling in for the night beside her boy, the puppy of her heart, if not her body, the child she had claimed as her own on a cold night in the forest, the bond she would protect for all the days of her life. Would you have made the same decision as Mr. Kellerman if you were in his shoes? Nova may have been his dog first, but she chose Leo in the end. Tell us what you think below. 2 days after the awards ceremony, Nova's story took an unexpected turn. Olivia was preparing breakfast when the phone rang. It was Dr. Miranda, the veterinarian who had treated Nova at the hospital and had since become their regular vet. "Olivia, I have some news about Nova that couldn't wait," she said, her voice unusually serious. "Can you come to the clinic today? Preferably without Leo, at least for this first visit." Olivia's hand tightened on the phone. "Is something wrong with Nova? Is she sick?" "Not exactly, Doctor," Miranda replied carefully. "But it's something we need to discuss in person. Can you find someone to watch Leo for an hour?" Fear knotted in Olivia's stomach. After everything they'd been through, Leo's rescue, the medal ceremony, even the confrontation with Nova's former owner, what new challenge was coming their way? She arranged for her neighbor to watch Leo, telling him she needed to pick up a surprise for Nova at the vet's office. It wasn't entirely a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. Leo was still fragile from his ordeal in the forest and the recent scare of almost losing Nova to her original owner. Whatever this new issue was, Olivia wanted to understand it fully before involving him. Nova seemed to sense something was happening. She watched Olivia with those intelligent golden eyes as she prepared to leave, her head tilted slightly in question. "You're coming with me, girl," Olivia assured her, clipping on her leash. "We're going to see Dr. Miranda." At the veterinary clinic, they were ushered immediately into an examination room, bypassing the usual wait. Dr. Miranda entered moments later, her face serious but not grim. "Thanks for coming so quickly," she said, giving Nova an affectionate pat. "During Nova's last checkup, I noticed some things that concerned me, so I ran some additional tests." Olivia's throat tightened. "What kind of things?" Dr. Miranda sat down, facing Olivia directly. Nova's mammary glands showed some changes that are unusual for a dog who hasn't recently been nursing, and her hormone levels were interesting. "What does that mean?" Olivia asked, her hand automatically going to Nova's head for reassurance, though whether she was reassuring the dog or herself, she wasn't sure. "It means," Dr. Miranda said carefully, "that I believe Nova may be pregnant." Olivia stared at the vet in shock. "Pregnant? But how? She's never away from us. She's always with Leo or me." "Remember when Nova went missing the night Leo was lost?" Dr. Miranda reminded her gently. "She was in the forest for hours before she found Leo, and then hours more before you found them both. It's possible she encountered a male dog during that time." Olivia sat back, trying to process this unexpected news. "But she's been fixed, hasn't she? You checked her when I first brought her in after finding her abandoned." Dr. Miranda nodded. "That's what makes this so unusual. Nova shows signs of having been spayed, but not completely. It appears whoever performed the procedure may have left a small portion of her reproductive system intact. It's rare, but it happens, especially with rushed or low-cost procedures." "So she's definitely pregnant?" Olivia asked, still struggling to believe it. "I'd like to do an ultrasound to confirm, but based on the blood work and physical exam, I'm fairly certain," Dr. Miranda replied. "And if I'm right, she's probably about 6 weeks along. That would time perfectly with her night in the forest." Nova sat calmly through the ultrasound, seemingly unconcerned as Dr. Miranda moved the probe over her abdomen. Olivia watched the screen, not entirely sure what she was looking for, until Dr. Miranda pointed it out. "There," she said, indicating a small, bean-shaped shadow on the screen. "And there, and there. I can see at least 4 puppies, possibly more." Olivia stared at the screen in wonder. Nova, her brave, loyal Nova, was going to be a mother again. After losing her first litter, after adopting Leo as her puppy, she was getting a second chance at motherhood. "The timing is concerning, Doctor," Miranda admitted as she wiped the gel from Nova's belly. "Given her history of losing her previous litter and the stress her body has been under from the rescue, the exposure to cold, the injury to her paw, dragging Leo through the forest. We'll need to monitor her closely." "Will she be okay?" Olivia asked, suddenly afraid for the dog who had saved her son. Dr. Miranda smiled reassuringly. "Nova is strong and healthy, despite what she's been through, and she'll have the best care possible this time, not like when she was abandoned during her first pregnancy. I think her chances are excellent." As they drove home, Olivia's mind raced with questions and concerns. How would Leo react to the news? Where would they keep the puppies? What would happen once they were born? And how had this happened exactly when Nova had been living as a completely pampered house dog? But one image kept returning to her mind. Nova, dragging Leo through the forest despite her own injury, risking everything to save him. Nova, who had already shown herself to be the most devoted mother imaginable, even to a child who wasn't her own species. Now, she would have puppies of her own to care for, and knowing Nova, she would be just as fiercely protective of them as she was of Leo. When they arrived home, Leo ran to greet them, throwing his arms around Nova's neck. "Did you get Nova's surprise?" he asked eagerly. Olivia knelt down beside him, deciding that honesty was the best approach. "Leo, Nova has a very special surprise for all of us," she said gently. "She's going to have puppies." Leo's eyes widened with astonishment. "Puppies? Like baby dogs?" He looked at Nova with newfound wonder. "You're going to be a real dog, Mommy?" Nova wagged her tail, seeming to understand the conversation was about her. "That's right," Olivia confirmed. "Dr. Miranda says there are at least 4 puppies, and they'll be born in about 3 or 4 weeks. Leo's face split into a huge grin. He wrapped his arms around Nova again, pressing his cheek against her fur. "You hear that, Nova? You're going to have puppies, real puppies of your own." For the next 3 weeks, preparations for the puppies consumed the Bennett household. Olivia set up a whelping box in a quiet corner of the living room, following Dr. Miranda's instructions to the letter. Leo helped line it with soft blankets, his face serious with responsibility. "They need to be really soft," he explained to Olivia as he arranged and rearranged the bedding. "Baby puppies have really sensitive skin. Dr. Miranda told me." Olivia smiled, watching her son transform from the child who needed protection into a protector himself. The upcoming birth of Nova's puppies had given him a focus for his energy, a way to channel his love for the dog who had saved him. Nova, meanwhile, grew rounder by the day, moving more slowly, but no less attentively where Leo was concerned. She still insisted on sleeping beside his bed each night, still followed him from room to room during the day, though now she often settled heavily onto her side, her golden eyes tracking him from her resting position. Word had spread about Nova's impending motherhood, adding yet another chapter to her already remarkable story. The local newspaper ran a small feature about it, and Dr. Miranda reported that people had been calling the clinic offering to adopt the puppies of the hero dog. "We could probably find homes for 100 puppies," she told Olivia during a checkup visit. "Everyone wants a puppy from Nova." It was a relief to know the puppies would be welcome, but Olivia couldn't help feeling a twinge of anxiety at the thought of them eventually leaving. How would Nova handle it after losing her first litter? How would Leo? Those concerns faded into the background, however, when Nova went into labor 2 days earlier than expected. It was the middle of the night when Nova's restless pacing and whining woke Olivia. She found the German Shepherd in the whelping box, panting heavily, her eyes wide with discomfort. "It's time," Olivia whispered, immediately calling Dr. Miranda, who had insisted on being present for the birth given Nova's history. Leo woke to the commotion, his sleepy confusion quickly turning to excitement when he realized what was happening. "The puppies are coming?" he asked, scrambling out of bed. "Can I watch?" Olivia hesitated, unsure if witnessing the birth might be too intense for a 5-year-old. But Dr. Miranda, arriving with impressive speed considering the late hour, offered a gentle perspective. "It's a natural process," she said as she knelt beside the whelping box to examine Nova. "And Leo and Nova have such a special bond. I think it might actually be good for her to have him nearby." So Leo sat beside Olivia on the floor near Nova's box, watching with wide-eyed wonder as the miracle of birth unfolded before them. Dr. Miranda guided them through the process, explaining each stage in simple terms that Leo could understand. The first puppy arrived just before dawn, a tiny, wet bundle that Nova immediately began to clean with gentle licks. Leo gasped in amazement as the little creature squirmed and squeaked, its eyes still tightly shut, its coat slick and dark. "It's so small," he whispered, leaning forward for a better look. "That's how all babies start," Dr. Miranda explained with a smile. "Even you were that small once." Leo looked dubious about this claim, but was too entranced by the newborn puppy to argue. As Nova continued to clean her firstborn, the second puppy began to emerge. By mid-morning, Nova had given birth to 5 healthy puppies, 3 females and 2 males. She lay exhausted but content in the whelping box, her new babies nursing hungrily as she watched over them with tired pride. "She did it," Dr. Miranda said, her voice thick with emotion. "After everything she's been through, she did it perfectly." Leo sat cross-legged beside the box, his face a picture of awe as he watched the tiny puppies nuzzling against their mother. "They're so perfect," he whispered, "like little Nova dolls." Olivia put her arm around his shoulders, pulling him close. "Nova is an amazing mother," she said softly. "To all her puppies, including you." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of puppy care and visitor management. It seemed everyone in town wanted to see Nova's puppies, but Olivia was careful to limit visitors, wanting to give Nova and her babies the peace and quiet they needed to thrive. One visitor, however, was especially welcome. Mr. Kellerman, or James, as he'd asked them to call him, had flown back to town specifically to see Nova and her puppies. When he arrived at the Bennett home, Nova greeted him with a friendly wag of her tail, apparently remembering him from their reunion at the awards ceremony. "Well done, girl," he said softly, kneeling to scratch behind her ears before she led him proudly to her puppies. Watching the big man coo over the tiny puppies, Olivia was struck again by his generosity in letting Nova stay with them. "They're beautiful," he said, looking up at Olivia with genuine happiness for Nova. "She's a wonderful mother, just as I always knew she would be." As the puppies grew, each developing their own personality, Leo appointed himself their official naming committee. He deliberated for days, consulting with Nova seriously before making his final decisions. "This one is Luna," he declared, pointing to the largest female, who had inherited Nova's golden eyes. "And this is Rocket," he added, indicating the most energetic male, who was always the first to explore beyond the whelping box. The other 3 became Star, Brave, and Lily, each name carefully chosen to reflect some quality Leo had observed in them. Nova seemed to approve of the names, responding when Leo used them to call the puppies back from their increasingly ambitious explorations of the living room. By the time the puppies were 6 weeks old, they had become the center of the Bennett household's universe. They tumbled and played, their tiny paws skittering across the hardwood floors, their high-pitched yips filling the house with joyful noise. Nova watched over them vigilantly, but with a relaxed confidence that spoke of her trust in her human family. The question of what would happen to the puppies once they were old enough to leave their mother had been weighing on Olivia's mind. She knew they couldn't keep all 5, their house wasn't big enough, and the cost of caring for 6 large dogs would be prohibitive. But the thought of sending them all away, especially after Nova had lost her first litter, seemed cruel. The solution came from an unexpected source. During one of his visits to see the puppies, James Kellerman made a suggestion. "I'd like to adopt one of them," he said, watching as the puppies romped around Nova. "If that's all right with you, it would mean a lot to have a part of Stell, Nova, with me." Olivia was touched by the request. "Of course," she said warmly. "Leo would need to approve, of course, but I think it's a wonderful idea." Leo, when consulted, took the responsibility very seriously. He studied each puppy, considering their personalities and how they might fit with Mr. Kellerman's life. "I think Rocket should go with Mr. James," he finally decided, because he has a big yard for running, and Rocket loves to run the most. Mr. Kellerman was visibly moved by Leo's thoughtful choice. "Rocket it is," he agreed, shaking Leo's hand solemnly. "I promise to take excellent care of him." The remaining puppies found homes with equal care and consideration. Luna went to Officer Rivera, who had been visiting regularly since their birth. Star was adopted by Dr. Miranda, who had fallen in love with the gentle female during her many checkups. Brave went to one of the search team members who had found Leo and Nova in the forest that night, which left only Lily, the smallest female, with a white star on her chest that mirrored Nova's marking. Leo had grown especially attached to her, often carrying her around the house and telling her stories about how brave her mother was. Olivia had been watching this growing bond with careful consideration. One evening, as they sat on the porch swing, watching Nova supervise her puppies play in the yard, she broached the subject. "Leo," she said gently, "we need to talk about Lily." Leo's face immediately fell, his arms tightening protectively around the puppy in his lap. "Do we have to give her away too?" he asked, his voice small. Olivia took a deep breath. "Well, that's what I wanted to discuss with you. What would you think about keeping Lily, Having her stay here with us and Nova? Leo's face lit up with sudden hope. Really? We could keep her? Forever? Forever, Olivia confirmed with a smile. But it would be a big responsibility. You'd have to help take care of her, just like you help with Nova. I will, Leo promised fervently. I'll help feed her and train her and everything. Oh, thank you, Mommy. He hugged Lily close, the puppy squirming happily in his arms. Did you hear that, Lily? You get to stay with us forever. Nova, hearing the excitement in Leo's voice, trotted over to investigate. She nosed at Lily, then looked up at Olivia as if seeking confirmation. Olivia reached down to stroke Nova's head. That's right, girl, she said softly. Lily's staying with us. One of your puppies gets to stay home. As the day approached when the other puppies would go to their new homes, Olivia worried how Nova would handle the separation. But she needn't have concerned herself. Nova seemed to understand the careful process they had undertaken, the loving homes that had been found. When James came to collect Rocket, Nova nudged the puppy forward as if giving her approval. She knows, James said, watching Nova's calm acceptance. She trusts us to take care of them. One by one, the puppies left with their new families, each departure marked by promises to visit and updates to be shared. Through it all, Nova remained serene, especially as Lily remained by her side, a living reminder of her successful motherhood. The last puppy to leave was Brave, headed to his new home with search team leader Mike Rodriguez. As Mike knelt to say goodbye to Nova, thanking her for the gift of her puppy, Leo had a sudden inspiration. Wait, he called, running into the house. He returned moments later with Nova's hero medal, the one she had received at the ceremony. Nova wants Brave to have this, he announced, holding out the medal. So he remembers to be brave, just like his mom. Mike took the medal with appropriate solemnity, clearly touched by the gesture. I'll hang it above his bed, he promised, and I'll tell him the story of his brave mother every night. Later that evening, as Leo got ready for bed, Olivia found him sitting on the floor, Lily curled in his lap, talking earnestly to Nova, who lay beside them. And they'll all come visit, he was saying. And Mr. James is going to send pictures of Rocket every week, and Officer Rivera said we can have play dates with Luna, and Dr. Miranda will bring Star when we go for checkups. Nova listened attentively, her golden eyes moving between Leo and the puppy in his lap. And Lily's staying right here with us, Leo continued, stroking the sleepy puppy. So, you don't have to be sad. You'll get to see her grow up, just like you're seeing me grow up. Olivia leaned against the doorframe, not wanting to interrupt this tender moment. Leo had understood, perhaps better than any of them, what Nova might be feeling as her puppies left. You know what, Nova? Leo said, his voice dropping to a confidential whisper. I think maybe this all happened for a reason. You got lost and came to us, and then I got lost and you found me, and then you had puppies who found their perfect homes. It's like we were all meant to find each other. Nova sighed contentedly, resting her head on Leo's knee. Time for bed, sweetheart, Olivia said gently, finally entering the room. Lily can sleep in her bed beside Nova tonight. Leo nodded, carefully placing the puppy in the small bed they had set up next to Nova's larger one. Nova immediately curled herself protectively around her remaining puppy, but her eyes remained on Leo as he climbed into his own bed. Good night, Nova, he whispered. Good night, Lily. Good night, my brave boy, Olivia added, kissing his forehead. As she turned out the light, Olivia paused in the doorway, looking back at the scene, her son, falling asleep with a peaceful smile on his face. Nova, watchful and protective as always, but with a new contentment about her. And tiny Lily, nestled against her mother, the newest member of their unconventional but perfect family. In that moment, Olivia felt a profound sense of rightness wash over her. From tragedy and fear had come this love, this family, this home. Nova had led Leo out of the darkness of the forest and, in doing so, had led them all to a place of deeper connection, of life's most essential truth. That love, in all its forms, was the greatest rescue of all. If you could adopt one of Nova's puppies, which one would you choose and why? Would you pick the adventurous Rocket, the gentle Star, the brave Luna, the determined Brave, or the sweet Lily? Let us know in the comments. 6 months had passed since Nova's puppies had gone to their new homes, and life in the Bennett household had settled into a joyful rhythm. Lily had grown from a tiny, tumbling ball of fur into a leggy adolescent dog. still smaller than her mother, but with the same golden eyes and unwavering loyalty. She followed Nova everywhere, learning from her mother's example how to be patient with Leo, how to distinguish between real threats and harmless surprises, how to be a guardian without being overprotective. The regular puppy reunions, as Leo called them, had become monthly events, with all 5 puppies and their new families gathering at the local dog park to let the siblings play together while the humans shared stories and updates. James Kellerman had even moved to a town just an hour away, enabling Rocket to be a frequent visitor to the Bennett home. On this particular Sunday morning, Olivia sat on a park bench watching Leo throw a ball for Nova and Lily, their synchronized movements revealing their shared DNA and training. Leo had grown taller in the past year, his face losing some of its baby roundness, but his eyes still lit up with the same pure joy whenever he played with the dogs. "They're amazing together," a voice said beside her, and Olivia turned to see Dr. Miranda taking a seat on the bench, her puppy Star frolicking nearby with Luna and Rocket. "They are," Olivia agreed, her chest filling with warmth as she watched Leo laugh, his arms wrapped around Nova's neck, as the German Shepherd patiently endured his exuberant hugs. "I can hardly remember what our life was like before Nova came into it." "Well, I imagine it had fewer muddy paw prints on the kitchen floor," Dr. Miranda joked. Olivia smiled, thinking of the countless tiny ways her life had changed since adopting Nova. The dog hair on the furniture, the extra food expenses, the walks in all weather, the rearrangement of her work schedule to ensure someone was always home with the dogs. None of it mattered compared to what Nova had given them in return. "A small price to pay," she said simply. Dr. Miranda nodded, her expression turning thoughtful. "You know, I've been working with animals for 15 years, and I've seen all kinds of bonds between pets and their people. But what Nova and Leo have, it's something special." Olivia followed her gaze to where Leo was now, sitting cross-legged on the grass, explaining something very seriously to both dogs, who watched him with identical expressions of canine attentiveness. "The night she found him in the forest," Olivia said softly, "when she dragged him through the cold and the dark, even with her paw injured, I'll never be able to thank her enough for that." "And you don't need to," Dr. Miranda replied. "That's the beautiful thing about dogs like Nova. They don't need thanks. Their love is completely unconditional." Their conversation was interrupted by Officer Rivera's arrival with Luna, who bounded across the park to join the puppy reunion. Soon, all 6 dogs were playing together, Nova watching over the younger dogs with maternal pride, occasionally joining in their games, but mostly content to supervise. "I have news," Officer Rivera announced as he joined the group of humans. "The police department has officially started a K9 training program inspired by Nova's rescue story. We're calling it the Nova Initiative, training dogs specifically for search and rescue operations." Everyone exchanged excited glances, and Olivia felt a surge of pride. Nova's heroism had not only saved Leo's life, but was now creating a legacy that might save many more. "That's wonderful," she said, watching as Nova perked up her ears, perhaps sensing that she was the topic of conversation. She'd be proud to know that. "Actually," Officer Rivera continued, looking a bit hesitant, "we were hoping that Nova might help with some of the training demonstrations. Nothing strenuous, just showing the new dogs and their handlers some of her natural searching abilities. Dr. Miranda mentioned she has an extraordinary sense of smell, even for a German Shepherd." Before Olivia could respond, a commotion across the park caught everyone's attention. A group of teenagers had set up a portable speaker and were playing music loudly, startling several of the dogs, including Lily, who ran to hide behind Leo's legs. Nova, however, reacted differently. Her head came up, ears forward, body alert but not aggressive. She moved to stand beside Leo, positioning herself slightly ahead of him, just as she had done that night in the forest with the fox. Her posture made it clear. She was ready to protect if needed, but she wasn't jumping to conclusions. "That," Officer Rivera said quietly, "is exactly what we want to teach our K9 units. Assessment before action, protection without aggression. Nova's a natural." The music situation resolved itself quickly as another park visitor asked the teenagers to use headphones instead. But the moment had illustrated Rivera's point perfectly. Nova had an innate ability to gauge situations, to protect without overreacting, to remain calm under pressure. "I'll have to discuss it with Leo," Olivia said thoughtfully. Nova is his dog, really, but I think he'd be proud to share her talents if it would help others. As if on cue, Leo came bounding over, Lily at his heels and Nova walking sedately behind them. "Mom, can we get ice cream before everyone goes home, please?" The puppy reunion turned into an impromptu ice cream party, with dogs and humans alike enjoying the beautiful spring day. As they were preparing to leave, James Kellerman approached Olivia with Rocket. "I've been meaning to tell you," he said, his voice warm with gratitude. "Adopting Rocket has been one of the best decisions I've ever made. After losing Stella, Nova, I didn't think I'd feel that connection with another dog. But Rocket, he's got her spirit." Olivia smiled, watching as Rocket playfully nudged his mother, inviting her to chase him. They all do, in different ways. It's amazing to see parts of her personality shine through in each of them. James nodded, his eyes a little misty. "I wanted to thank you again, for sharing her puppies with me, for letting me be part of Nova's life again, even in this new way." "Thank you for understanding that her place was with Leo," Olivia replied simply. "Not everyone would have been so generous." The conversation was interrupted by Leo calling for Nova and Lily, eager to head home for lunch. As they said their goodbyes, Olivia was struck by how much larger their family had grown, not just with the addition of Lily, but with all these people and dogs connected by Nova's remarkable story. Back home, after lunch, Leo sprawled on the living room floor with his notebook, working on what he called his special project. Nova lay beside him, her head on her paws, while Lily alternated between napping and playfully pouncing on stray pencils. "What are you working on so intently?" Olivia asked, curious about the project that had been occupying Leo's free time for weeks. Leo looked up, his face serious. "It's Nova's story, for school. Mrs. Peterson said we could write about our biggest adventure, and I'm writing about getting lost in the forest and how Nova saved me." Olivia sat down beside him, peering at the carefully printed words and colorful illustrations that filled the pages. "That's a wonderful idea, Leo. I want everyone to know how brave she is," Leo explained, absently stroking Nova's ear as he spoke. "And I'm going to read it to the class next week. Mrs. Peterson said Nova can come too, for the presentation." Olivia nodded, touched by her son's desire to share Nova's heroism with his classmates. "I'm sure Nova would be honored to attend." Leo's face brightened. "Really? You think she'd like that?" "I think she'd follow you anywhere," Olivia said honestly, "just like she did that night in the forest." The day of Leo's school presentation arrived with much excitement. Nova had been bathed and brushed until her coat gleamed, and she wore her hero medal on her collar, the original having been replaced after Leo gave Nova's first medal to Brave. Lily had to stay home, still too young and exuberant for a classroom setting, but she seemed to understand the importance of the occasion, sitting at attention as they left, as if sending them off with her best wishes. At the school, Nova attracted immediate attention, students and teachers alike stopping to greet the famous dog who had made headlines with her dramatic rescue. Nova accepted the attention regally, staying close to Leo's side as they made their way to his classroom. Mrs. Peterson had prepared the class for their special visitor, and the children sat in a respectful circle as Leo took his place at the front, Nova settling beside him with quiet dignity. "This is my dog Nova," Leo began, his voice clear despite his nervousness. "And this is the story of how she saved my life." For the next 15 minutes, the classroom was silent except for Leo's voice as he recounted his experience, getting lost following the cardinal, the terrifying night alone in the forest, Nova finding him and protecting him from the fox, and the incredible journey as she dragged him towards safety. The children listened with rapt attention, their eyes wide as Leo described the cold, the fear, and the moment when Nova had decided to pull him home. When he finished his story, showing the last illustration of Nova receiving her medal, the class burst into spontaneous applause. "That was an excellent presentation, Leo," Mrs. Peterson said warmly. "Would anyone like to ask Leo or Nova a question?" Hands shot up around the room, and Leo beamed with pride as he answered questions about Nova, the rescue, and their life since that dramatic night. Nova remained a perfect ambassador, allowing the children to pet her when Mrs. Peterson organized a controlled meet and greet at the end of the session. As they were leaving, Mrs. Peterson pulled Olivia aside. "Leo's story about Nova is really remarkable," she said. "Have you ever thought about having it published? As a children's book, perhaps? It has such a powerful message about loyalty and courage." Olivia blinked in surprise. The thought had never occurred to her. "Do you really think anyone would be interested?" "Absolutely," Mrs. Peterson nodded emphatically. "Children love animal stories, especially true ones with happy endings. And Nova's story is exceptionally inspiring." The seed planted by Mrs. Peterson took root in Olivia's mind. That evening, after Leo had gone to bed, she sat at the kitchen table with his notebook, carefully reading through his account of the rescue. The childlike directness of his words had a power all their own, capturing both the terror of being lost and the absolute trust he had in Nova. Over the next few months, with Leo's enthusiastic participation, Olivia worked on shaping his school project into a children's book manuscript. They took new photographs of Nova and Lily, found an artist to create illustrations based on Leo's original drawings, and refined the story to appeal to young readers while maintaining the emotional truth of their experience. The manuscript, titled Nova's Night, the true story of a brave dog's rescue, was picked up by a small publishing house specializing in children's books, much to Leo's delight and Nova's apparent indifference, though she did seem to enjoy the photo sessions, posing with dignified patience as the photographer worked. By the time the book was published, a full year had passed since the night in the forest. The Bennett family had grown and changed in countless ways. Leo was now in second grade, more confident and outgoing than before. Lily had matured into a beautiful young dog, still playful but showing signs of her mother's intelligence and protective instincts. And Nova, now 7 years old, had settled comfortably into her role as the family's gentle guardian, her heroism now immortalized in print. The book launch was held at the local bookstore, with a portion of the proceeds designated for the animal shelter where Olivia had first found Nova. The event turned into a community celebration, with all of Nova's puppies and their families attending, along with Officer Rivera, Dr. Miranda, and many of the search team members who had been part of the rescue. James Kellerman flew in for the occasion, bringing Rocket and a surprise gift, a custom-made doghouse for Lily, built to match Nova's that he had crafted months earlier. "So, mother and daughter can have matching homes," he explained, his eyes twinkling. As Leo sat at a small table signing copies of the book with Olivia, Nova's paw print was added to special editions. A woman approached with her young daughter, who clutched a copy of the book tightly to her chest. "We drove 2 hours to be here," the woman said, her voice thick with emotion. "Your story, Nova's story, it meant so much to my Emily." She gestured to her daughter, who was staring at Nova with undisguised awe. "Emily got lost in a shopping mall last month. She was terrified. But then she remembered the book we'd been reading, about the brave dog who rescued the lost boy. It helped her stay calm until security found her." Leo's eyes widened. "Really? Our book helped her?" The woman nodded, tears shimmering in her eyes. She kept telling herself, what would Nova do? It gave her courage. Olivia felt a lump form in her throat as she watched Leo process this information, that his experience, his story, had actually helped another child in fear. Nova, sensing the emotional shift, moved closer to Leo, leaning against his leg in silent support. "Nova would be very proud of you, Emily," Leo said solemnly, reaching for her copy of the book. "You were brave, just like her." As he signed the book with careful concentration, adding a special note for Emily, Olivia marveled at how far they had all come. The terrifying night that could have ended in tragedy had instead blossomed into this moment of connection and healing. Later that evening, as they walked home from the bookstore, Leo was unusually quiet, seemingly lost in thought as Nova and Lily trotted beside him. "What are you thinking about, buddy?" Olivia asked, nudging him gently. Leo looked up, his face serious in the glow of the streetlights. "I was thinking about that girl, Emily, and how our book helped her not be so scared." Olivia nodded. "That was pretty amazing, wasn't it?" "Yeah," Leo agreed. Then, after a pause, "Mom, do you think bad things sometimes happen so good things can happen later?" Olivia considered the question, appreciating its depth. "That's a really interesting thought, Leo. I'm not sure bad things happen for a reason exactly, but I do think that sometimes, when something difficult or scary happens, we can find ways to create something good from it afterward." Leo nodded, processing this. "Like how I got lost, which was really scary. But then Nova saved me, which was amazing, And then we wrote the book, which helped Emily, so something good came from something bad. That's right, Olivia agreed, touched by her son's wisdom. And there's something very brave about being able to take a frightening experience and turn it into something that helps others. They walked in silence for a moment, Nova and Lily ranging ahead, but constantly checking back, never straying too far. The evening was cool but pleasant, the stars beginning to appear in the deepening blue of the sky. "I'm glad I got lost," Leo said suddenly, his voice quiet but certain. Not because it was fun, it was really scary, but because of everything that happened after. Nova finding me, her puppies being born, our book helping Emily. All of that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't followed that bird into the forest. Olivia put her arm around his shoulders, pulling him close as they walked. "That's a very generous way to look at it, Leo. Finding the good that came from something difficult takes a special kind of courage." Nova circled back to walk beside them, as if sensing the importance of the conversation. Leo reached down to stroke her head, his small fingers tangling in her fur, just as they had that night in the forest. "Nova knew," he said with the absolute certainty of a child. "She knew she had to find me, so all these good things could happen." Olivia smiled, not correcting him, but treasuring his perspective. In Leo's world, Nova wasn't just a dog with strong protective instincts. She was a wise guardian who understood the larger pattern of their lives, who had somehow known that from that night of fear would bloom this garden of joy and connection. And perhaps, in some way beyond human understanding, he was right. When they reached home, Leo insisted on reading the book to Nova and Lily before bed, a ritual he had started the day the first printed copies arrived. The dogs settled on either side of him on his bed, listening with apparent interest as he read the story they had lived, their golden eyes following the illustrations that captured their adventure. "And that's how Nova brought me home." Leo read the final lines. "She never gave up, never stopped trying, never left me alone. That's what real heroes do. They keep going, even when it's hard, even when they're hurt or tired or scared. They keep going for the people they love." He closed the book, looking at Nova with shining eyes. "You're a real hero, Nova," he said softly, wrapping his arms around her neck. "The best hero ever." Nova sighed contentedly, resting her head on his lap as Lily snuggled against his other side. As Olivia watched from the doorway, she thought about the incredible journey they had all taken, from that night of terror to this moment of peace. Nova had not only saved Leo's life in the forest, she had changed it forever, had changed all their lives, weaving their separate stories into one unbreakable tapestry of love and courage. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees at the edge of the forest, the same forest that had nearly taken Leo from them, the same trees that had witnessed Nova's unwavering determination to bring her boy home. Now, it seemed less a place of fear and more a reminder of the night their family had truly been forged in the darkness and the cold through the power of a dog's extraordinary love. As Olivia tucked Leo in for the night, with Nova settling on her bed beside him and Lily curled at his feet, she felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over her, for the cardinal that had led Leo into the forest, for Nova's remarkable instincts, for all the seemingly random threads of chance and choice that had woven together to create this family, unconventional perhaps, but bound by something stronger than blood, the courage to find each other again and again, no matter how dark the night or how difficult the path. Has a pet ever helped you through a difficult time? Share your own story of animal heroism in the comments. We'd love to hear how your furry family members have been there for you.